Right, we're going to have a look at another example using a for loop. I'm going to demonstrate a program which I'd like you then to try to write. In the second part of the video, I'm going to go through a solution. So watch it, try to understand what the program entails, and then go away and try to write it. You can pause the video, try to write it, and then at the end, after you've had a go, hopefully successfully, you can have a look at how I've done it. So first of all, the program. The program is testing times table, although I can't spell very well. That should be which times table would you like to be tested on? I made a mistake there. Don't make mistakes. So let's try 4. So I type in which one I want, and it generates a question. What's 7 times 4? 4 7s are 28. Correct. Tells me if it's right. That's good. 6 4s are 24, but I made a mistake, and it tells me it's incorrect. Great. 15 4s, that's a little bit more tricky. That's 60, I think. 14 4s would be 56 then, and 8 times 4 would be 32. I hope. Yay. So there's the program. It asks you what times table you want to be tested on. So you type in a number, and then it randomly generates this number here, the 7, 6, 15, 14 and 8. That's a number between 1 and 20. So we're only going to test them up to 20 times. You can be more generous if you want to do 1 to 10. So that's randomly generated. The 4 is from what the user typed in. So you generate the calculation, you display it to the screen, and you ask the user what their answer is. Based on their answer, you either display if it's correct or if it's incorrect. And you do that 5 times. That's where the loop comes in. Have a go. See if you can do how far you can get. If you're a bit unsure about for loops, just have a go at doing one of these. Just one. Just print out a sum, get the user to enter it, and tell them if it's correct. If you can do that, that's not too bad at this stage. The for loop is a bit more challenging. If you think about it, you want to do this 5 times, but it's getting the for loop in the right place that's difficult. But have a go at doing one sum first and displaying whether it's correct or not, and then have a go at the for loop. So what you should do now is pause this or finish or stop this, because the rest of the video is going to look through the solution. Don't follow the solution until you've had a go yourself. You won't get a lot from it. Have a go yourself first. Programming is all about practice, trying things out. So have a go. Right, so a solution. Let me go to a blank page. The solution, first of all, I need to get the times table from the user. So times table is going to be an integer. So I'm going to ask the user to tell me which times table you want to be tested on. So I'll ask them it, and then I'm going to read it in. So times table will store what the user has entered. I need it to be an integer, so let's do the convert to int just to make sure that that's doing that. So that's the start. I've asked the user what times table do you want to be tested on. I've read it in. The next thing I need to do is to generate the question. So to generate the question, I'm going to need a random number. So let me have my random, it's going to be a random number. Okay, so I'm going to create that random number. It's going to be between 1 and 20. So if you remember, this is how we did it. So I've got too many brackets there. Not enough brackets. I need that last one. So that will get a number between 0 and 19. Add 1 becomes between 1 and 20. So random number is now storing a random number between 1 and 20. However, remember, to make sure it's not guessable, we need to randomize at the beginning. So I've just gone to the top of the program and done a randomize. So I've got my random number. I've got my times table. I now need to display I need to display the sum. So I'll say what is I'm doing console.write, so it's all going to be on the same line, and then I'll print out random number, and I'll do a little string, so the times, then times table, and then finally my equals question mark. Okay, I'm just going to go and put my console.read key in and check that this works. So let's have a look at that. It should just print out, if I type my number in 5, it prints out a random number. Great. Next thing I need to do is to get the answer from the user. So I'm going to have to store that somewhere. So let's go and have another variable called user answer. I'll put user answer rather than using user guess. Hopefully it's not a guess. So user answer equals console.readline. Again, I should do that, convert it to integer, and of course I should pass a message on to the user saying, oh, I suppose no, I don't, because I've already just done that, haven't I? So that will say what the user answer is. So can I do that? Let's just check. 5 times table 3 is 15. Okay, so far so good. Now I need to decide if it's okay. I need to make a selection. Is it right or not? Remember, selection statement, a simple selection statement is if, and all I have to say is user answer equal to, now I have to work it out, it's random number times table. So what this bit here there says is what the user typed in equal to these two numbers times together. So I do the calculation and say is equal to what the user typed in. If it is, right line, I display correct. If it's not, else, console.writeLine incorrect. So that should be the heart of the game working. If it's, is it a game? Probably not. 4 times 5 is 20. Correct. Brilliant. Let's test it again. 8 times 5, 12. I know it's not, but it's incorrect. Testing whether it works. Okay. So what we need to do now is put the for loop in the right place. So we need to think about what we want to do every time we loop it. Do we want to create the variables from scratch every time? No. Do we want to randomize every time? No, we only need to do that once. Do we want to ask what times table every time? No, we don't. Do we want to create a random number and display the question? Yes, we do. So the for loop is going to go here, and I'll call it counter, and I want to loop 5 times. So 1 to 5, 0 to 4, 5 to 10, whatever you fancy. Make sure it's just 5. This will loop 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so 5 times. And where do I end? So I've got my for loop there. Where does the next go? Well, I want to do all of that. Do I want to ask if the if is right every time? I do. And then that's it. So that's the end of the program, so it'll go in down there. So hopefully what will happen now, it'll create the variables, do the randomization, ask me what times table is and read it in. Then 5 times it will generate a random number, display the sum, get the answer from the user, check if it's correct, display if it's correct or incorrect, and go back round. So if I now run this, what times table? Stick to 5. I know my 5 times table. 10, 50, 14. Oh, that's easy. That's 120. Oh no, I got it wrong, but it works. 2 times 5 is 10, and 13 times 5 is, what is it? 75. 65. Whoops. It works. I've done it right. There we go. So everything there works and it does what I need to do. There's just one thing I can make better, which is this displaying the question. The way I've done it is straightforward, it's simple, and it works. And if that's what you prefer, that's fine for the time being. But I can do it as a console.readline right, I can put all of this in together. That stops. So I can actually, if I just delete, I can join all these together using the ampersand, the and symbol. And I'm just going to delete, so that's random number. So everything that was in a console.write, oh, that's not an ampersand, I'm going to put an ampersand between, so that can go followed by an ampersand times table goes next, an ampersand, that final there, and get rid of those console.writes. And what I've now done is just put that into a single console.write. So what this says is display the string what is and whatever the value of random number is. You notice I've left a space after what is, and then it will display random number, and then it will display the space x space to show the multiplication, whatever the times table was, and then this final thing asking what the question is. So if I run that, we shouldn't see any difference. It should be exactly the same, and it is. 17.5, 85, 65, 30, 1.5, phew, and there we go. It works. So hopefully you got something working. I would hope you could get the question working. Based on what you've seen in other videos, I would hope that you'd be able to do that. You've then got this for loop. Now one of the important things about the for loop is it's a fixed number of times. We saw that with the last game where you were guessing the random number. I guessed it right first time. It still went through all of the loops. And for loops do that. It will loop until you get to the certain value. Whatever value that is, it will loop to. Now that doesn't always have to be a fixed number. So what we could do here is change this slightly, have number of questions. And I could have another prompt at the beginning and say how many questions do you want? And then I could read in whatever the user types in. So how many questions do they want? And instead of looping to 5, I will loop to whatever number of questions is. So it will still loop a fixed number of times. It will still loop from 1 all the way through to the number of questions, but the user can set the number of questions. So it's slightly different. So in this case, when I run it, I say what times table 5, how many questions? I only want 3 questions. What's 12? That's 60. 20, that's 100. That's still 100, and then I finish. So in that case, I've got I've been able to define, the user has been able to define the number of questions, so the number of times to loop. But it's still fixed. It will always loop that number of times. Whatever number I put in, if I put a 5, it will always loop 5 times. If I put 6, it will always loop 6 times. It's fixed, and it's important to remember that with for loops. Next video we'll look at while loops, and you'll see why it's important, because it's a big difference between the different kind of loops, the number of times that it does actually loop.